friends. I'm Amy Morgan, the feature writer for the San Antonio Marriage Initiative. And I am so delighted today to introduce you to Cathy and Ron Tiarina, who advocate for those overcoming the culture of incarceration. Ron and Cathy founded the Christian nonprofit Ridge Project 20 years ago to empower generational responsibility and improve the lives of families. This organization has been recognized as a federal Department of Health and Human Services best practice program and was identified nationally as a leader in family and youth services. Launched in Ohio, where Ron was originally incarcerated, the Ridge Project includes partner organizations in 13 states and 4 international countries. It's impacted thousands over the past years through its flagship TYRO Programs. Ron and Cathy are going to share how they beat impossible odds to not only survive, but thrive and inspire others to build strong, resilient families despite unimaginable obstacles. Ron and Cathy, thank you so much for being here.
So thank you so much for allowing us this great opportunity to share with the viewers and the people that you're connected with, our struggle, but our victory.
Yeah, well, as we mentioned in the introduction, you built the Ridge Project out of your own experience as you struggled to keep your family together during Ron's lengthy prison sentence. Can you share a little of your story and then how that translated into all the wonderful work you're doing for others now?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Amy. So in 1991, Ron went to prison for a crime he didn't commit. He spent 15 years in prison. And through that journey, we almost lost our family. The storm was incredible. It was like, you think about a hurricane, a tornado, a tsunami. It felt like everything was coming against us. But as we sat in a prison visiting room, we first of all decided that we were not going to let this destroy our family. Ron recommitted his life to the Lord as soon as he went into prison. He led me to the Lord in a prison visiting room, totally transformed our lives. And from that point on, we began really investing in our relationship and in our children and our family. Began to build a solid foundation for a legacy. And then we translated that into the TYRO Curriculum to be able to help every family coming behind us.
I want to add that, yes, I was innocent when I was convicted of, but I wasn't being an upright citizen, right? So, God really got a hold of us, and he got a hold of me while I was in there to show me, what led up to where no one could take me at my word. And this is what we learned growing in, to become people of our word, become people where worth following. And, that's what the TYRO, our curriculum that God placed in our heart. And he gave us the word TYRO, which is a Latin word, which means apprentice, novice, someone learning something new, a warrior. And the Lord taught us how to fight for our family and fight for our legacy, because our lives have to be bigger than ourselves. And that's what we teach couples around the world and families around the world. When you find something that you're committed to as a family, as a unit, that's something greater than yourselves, this is what really is that Holy Ghost glue, if you will, that brings the couple together. When you're at this, you got a pivotal point in your life where you find that one thing you're both focused on. Because it's one thing to have a career. If I have a career and I go take care of my business, and Cathy has a career and she takes care of her business, but we believe that God has brought people together to find that one mission together to accomplish.
Well, and y'all were kind of on parallel journeys for a while. And, and there's some places where our church champions can kind of fit in on both of those journeys. Cathy, you were home with 2 little boys, one who had struggled with asthma, so it was hard for you to make ends meet. And yet you had some transformational experiences with some people that helped you. Could you talk a little bit about that? And because that's something that really formed part of your foundation that you've taken forward into TYRO, but also where our church champions could perhaps see themselves stepping in like those people stepped in for you. And then we'll get to you, Ron.
Absolutely. So I think, without relationship, it's really hard to bring transformation. So of course, God gets a hold of us and God changes our lives. But then you need to see the model, right? You need to see it in flesh and blood and have people walk alongside you. God designed us for relationship. He didn't design us to be on this journey alone. And so God interjected people into my life. And people that mentored me, that walked along with me, that saw me as their equal, and just really welcomed me into their home as friends, and even almost like part of their family. And it all started when, I needed propane, and a lady from a church came to help me out, from a church ministry. And then she connected me to another couple that was around our age. And they went to go visit Ron in prison with me, got to know us as a couple, as a family. And we really, we looked at the impact that they had in our lives as they modeled what a healthy relationship looked like. And we said, God, that's what we want to do for other people. Fast forward 20 years, and we have impacted over 500,000 people face to face, and over 1.5 million virtually. And, that's so profound to think about the investment of this family into our lives, and many other families along the way that just came alongside, befriended us, engaged us so we didn't feel invisible. We didn't feel marginalized. And instead, we felt part of the church body, part of the body of Christ, and a contributing part. And that's a really big deal. And so now we have the privilege and honor of not just helping people, but also equipping people to help people, which is just phenomenal.
Well, and I think that's really a place where our marriage champions could step in. And like you said, even, the one lady with a provided the thing you needed, but then it was more than just the propane. It was connecting you to another mentor family. And that's, where some of our people that are watching could really see themselves. And then you had some advice in too, as we talked and in the blog piece, of really about how to come alongside someone in a way that's positive, in a way that you said they cast a vision for your family.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they actually supported our family. It was the first time that it had somebody, because our sphere of influence before Ron went to prison wasn't a positive sphere of influence. Right. And so as we changed connections, and the people in the church were really supportive of, what can we do to help your marriage make it, really made us understand, or helped us understand, because we already felt like, that this was worth saving, that our family was just as important as every other family in spite of the incarceration. And our friends at church affirmed that and reaffirmed that for us, that yes, your family is worth fighting for. And it gave us that support that we needed.
I think just marriage champions hearing that, how important it is to affirm, to not say, oh gosh, he's over there, you better off just, leave him.
Yeah.
Know that your family is worth fighting for. And then part of that has translated into what you do for families. But Ron, now you tell what you were doing on your side, and then we'll talk about how all that came together to become TYRO as it is today.
As I began to really understand what it meant to be a man of my word, the examples that I had to look for were men in prison. And so God really introduced me to men, and men came into my life that had been serving a lengthy sentence and had already a lot of time under their belt, if you will, right? 10 or 15 years already incarcerated, but they grew up in there becoming men of their word. And these guys were scholars, Bible scholars, educated men, where they gotten their degrees while they were in prison and so forth, and really understanding that hard work equals profit, even behind the bars. And so by them carrying themselves in a way that is respectable and honorable inside prison, it transferred into relationships inside there, where other men were mentoring men on what it means to survive the penitentiary. And now I'm learning I'm growing up in prison. I was 25 years old, and I'm really learning what does it mean to be a husband? What does it mean to be somebody's son? What does it mean to be somebody's cousin, uncle? These roles that men play in life, I think we take those for granted. And then as Cathy was meeting people in the church, and then they were able to come and visit me, one thing, if I could share with anybody who's listening out there that's a church going, you have to remove any stigma you could think of when you meet a guy in prison or a woman in prison. They're just normal people who made mistakes. And most of the time you hear this from people who've never been incarcerated. Well, I never got caught, right? When that may be true, but it's also, that's a sense of a little bit of a prejudice. Right. When you say, well, I was doing that, but I never got caught, because you can hear in the voice, there's a little bit of judgment going on,
a little pride,
and really to walk in humility to help an individual who's incarcerated. You got to remove any stigma, any judgment you may have, because all of us have fallen short of the glory of God. All of us, the word of God says, we're about filthy rags, right? All of us, before I became a convict, guess what? And before I became born again, I was a sinner. Saved by grace, right? And I think people forget that perspective, that we all need Jesus. whether you're physically incarcerated, mentally incarcerated, emotionally incarcerated, or spiritually incarcerated, Jesus is the one who holds the keys to unlock that type of freedom that we all are looking for in our lives, despite where you're at in your life.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's very important for those watching to really understand the spirit in which you administer. So, as you guys were visiting, you were looking around the waiting room and seeing not a whole lot of family interaction going on. And you were noticing that you really wanted to do something better for your family. And then the other guys were noticing, right? They were noticing Cathy and the kids that kept showing up. So how did that translate into the work that you started doing?
So when guys would ask me and say, man, what are you doing that your wife is always coming to see you? I said, well, just look at me. Right?
No.
So
A handsome man.
right. So, but really,
And I was like, no, baby, that's not it.
So we began to ask ourselves, okay, what is different about us? What is happening in us that is not happening in them? And the answer always falls back to Jesus Christ saved us. He saved our life.
Right.
When we began to really study the scriptures together and really humble, and I'm talking about me, humble myself and be willing to be taught again. There's a saying out there that says, when the student is ready, the teacher comes. And God was sending people in my life where I was able to listen and learn and really try to put myself in Cathy's shoes, not try to change her or fix her, because I'm a mess. I'm trying to get me together.
Right. But then taking God's principles and God's word and putting those things into action into our family, into our relationship. And so then Ron began to do, actually, it began with Bible studies, and he was leading Bible studies on what does it really mean to be a man after God's own heart? What does God call us to be as husbands, as fathers? And so then Ron would call me and say, well, so-and-so's girlfriend or mother of his children or wife is really struggling, and can you reach out to them? So it began like super informal, really just, connecting with other people that were in the struggle, the same struggle we were in. And, over the course of time, I mean, it seemed like at first that it just kind of slowly grew, 1 family, 3 families, 5 families. And then it just seemed like it went from there to like hundreds of families, and from there to thousands of families. It just kept multiplying. And the whole time as we're on this journey, we kept asking God, okay, Lord, well, what should we do now? And his answer was always the same: follow me. We're like, okay, well, we're going to follow you, but what else should we do? Because we want to be the workers, right? Yeah. And God was like, I will do it. I will take credit. It will be me in you. All I need you to do is follow me. And we really learned in that obedience is better than sacrifice. He wasn't looking for us to sacrifice things and to be miserable or uncomfortable, but simply to follow him and let him take on our burden and take on the role of Christians. And he has just, when we talk about God's faithfulness endures forever and then some.
One of the things that I learned in prison was that when Jesus was working within us and teaching us, he wasn't telling us to preach him, right? And I learned this trying to be an evangelist inside the prison walls, where a guy came up to me. I'm telling him about Jesus, and he said, "Get away from me with that stuff. That stuff doesn't work." And so I went back to my cell and I started really seeking God and going, Lord, what is that I'm doing wrong? Nobody wants to hear about you. And the Holy Ghost told me, I didn't tell you to preach me. I told you to be me. Mm-hmm. And so this is really where people would understand relationship changes people. Mm-hmm. They will know you're a Christian by your love. Mm-hmm. They're not interested in all the theology or doctrine that you might have under your belt and and the lofty stuff. Just down to earth people, meet me where I'm at. And that's what Jesus was really good at, meeting people right where they're at. And I think people lose sight of that. People forget that, hey, you don't got to be fancy. You don't have to have fancy clothes, fancy cars, and all that to impress people. Just showing up, showing out, and shutting up is what really matters.
Well, you were showing up for the guys inside, and Cathy, you were showing up for their significant others on the outside. How did that then translate into what the Ridge Project is today?
So we began, to have this vision as we began talking about it in the prison visiting room of saying, we know that we're going through this for a reason, that God has not just rescued our family, but is equipping us to to reach into the lives of people that are crying out to him every day, Lord, send help. I don't know what to do. And, what an incredible honor and privilege to be part of an answered prayer. And so as we developed, took and formalized, it started out with Ron, as he was designing this program inside, was called Unity. And then that became Keeping Faith, keeping families and inmates together in him, which then as we began to apply for grants, it became Keeping Families and Inmates Together in Harmony, and then transitioned into the TYRO program. And, just being able to, when God says, feed them, clothe them, visit them in prison, he doesn't say, go do Bible study with the people that are hungry, go do Bible study with the people that are naked. It's like really providing that those hard things, those actual tangible things. And so that's what God has called us to do, is to provide people with tangible skills to transform their lives and their families. And also given us models, in the mentor family, but also, another lady at church that pursued me. She wouldn't let me, I would come into church at the last minute and run out as soon as it was over, because I didn't want to be in a relationship. I was so hurting. And this lady ran out, literally chased me out into the parking lot, and I'm walking as fast as I can to get away from her, because I don't want to have, it's like I'm so much pain. I didn't want to cry. I didn't want to be vulnerable. And I got my kids in the car, and she stood between me and my car door and engaged me in conversation, in loving conversation. Hey, can I take you out to eat? Let's do something. Let's get our kids together. And she just wouldn't take no for an answer. And I think, that God's love does that. He pursues us, and we can only run for so long, and then we're face to face with him. And when we exemplify that and let people know that, I'm here, I care about you, and I want to engage in relationship, that we represent Christ in that.
Well, tell me a little bit more about what the Rich Project and TYRO is doing now, because you've got your family side, and then you got your teen side, and then you've got the part that's even now reaching farther and farther, because you put some of your programs on electronically. But let's start with your family side. You've won so many awards, and you're doing such great work. I don't want to not talk about it. You guys are so humble and wonderful about giving God the glory. But nuts and bolts now.
Let me just start by saying, we attack the culture of the entitlement mentality by way of fatherhood, healthy marriage, and workforce development. We have a country right now. We live in a country where there's fatherlessness everywhere, and it's epidemic proportions. And we really believe in Malachi, where it talks about, if you turn the hearts of the father back to the hearts of the children hearts back unto the father. This is the answer to what's happening in America. There's no dads where they're supposed to be. And the kids that are becoming dads, these are kids trying to raise kids, and that doesn't work.
Right. So we have three major divisions. One is our youth division, and that's prevention. And then we have intervention, which we primarily work with incarcerated people that have experienced incarceration or generational cycles of poverty. And then redirection, which really just helps people that are kind of struggling where they are, and helps people redirect their life towards healthy thinking, healthy permanent relationships. We disrupt the idea that there's anything such as perfection, and we help them understand that, what the cycle of self-destruction looks like, and how to move from a cycle of self-destruction into a cycle of self-improvement. We currently serve each year around 25 to 30,000 youth, and we serve around 1,000 to 1,200 adults. And so, and then that's with our individual face-to-face program. Then we have, by training other organizations, and also, by the grace of God, we were able to convert some content into digital content, which we serve over 1 million people with digital content a year. And then all of our other partners, of course, serve thousands in addition.
So the Rich Project is really a catalyst for people to onboard and to launch. Right. We want to help people launch their dreams. We bring this ability to dream again. We help people own their story. And once they begin to own their story, then they can realize that their story no longer owns them. Right. And now this shame and guilt and embarrassment, that cloud that's been holding back their family for generations, will begin to dissipate. But we also say your past does not define who you are, but it will qualify you for your future if not only you let it, but you learn from it.
And you have TYRO Dads, right? Is specifically for that. Let's talk about that one too. Tell us, give us an example or exactly what it is, because I think that's so fascinating, because you said fatherlessness is such a scourge in our nation, and you are specifically addressing that problem.
You know, when we talk about Tyro dads, we talk when we're working with men, no matter how old they are, right? Real men don't play in playgrounds. We build them. Real men don't play house. We build them, right? And when they begin to understand and really grasp uh, that responsibility, that duty, that honor. You know, this is the greatest title you can hold, dad, father, right? I love it when my daughter and my grandkids, they call me papa, right? I love that. And this is a badge of honor that I wear proudly. And I don't want to ever lose sight of that ever again.
Right. So TYRO Dads equips dads to understand their role as father. And so the word TYRO is a Latin word. It means apprentice, novice, someone learning something new, a warrior. And we teach men and individuals how to war for their legacy, how to become leaders in their home, their community, and their workplace. And that creates a model. It builds a path for their kids so that their children can grow up to be healthy, responsible adults. But without dad really leading the way, you know, our kids have so many more obstacles, so many more challenges. But when we teach dad the importance of going ahead and becoming a man worth following, we also help them understand that their kids are looking up to them and going to follow them anyway. And so they have a choice and a decision whether or not they are going to lead their children to paths of destruction, or if they're going to lead their children into paths of righteousness and into a firm foundation for the future.
You know, Cathy said earlier that practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes permanent. Cathy and I don't have a perfect life, a perfect relationship, but it's healthy and it's permanent. Practice makes permanent.
Well, and I could really see, you know, you with the program like TYRO Dads, is that something that mentors could learn how to do with people? That's something they could jump alongside with you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because they could do it in small groups. They could be a facilitator, or they could be a group guide where they use video content and then just, guide the dads through it. So there's so many different ways that churches could get engaged and involved. We also have a faith-based, we have scriptures to go along with it. And we also have the secular. So there's all kinds of options.
You know, one of the great things that came out of TYRO Dads through our own experience is that as the men were coming out of prison, they would get these jobs, and the companies would ask, "What's so different about you? What is going on that you're not like everybody else?" So, well, I'm a TYRO. What is this TYRO? So companies started asking for TYRO for their entry-level employees or executives. So TYRO leadership was developed out of that
need.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So that's something that companies can access too, to learn these TYRO principles of how to be an upstanding person and lead your family.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, and as you talked about companies, you've developed some really innovative and cool programs to help people that have been incarcerated and once they get out to reconnect with the workforce. Let's talk about that, because I really love those ideas and those programs that are super successful.
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually, our first workforce development program was actually trucking. And so we began working with the state, ODRC, Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections, which we're really blessed to live in a state that has rehabilitation in their name. And then we also had to work with insurance companies and hospitals
and the
school, everything, the CDL schools, to actually bring CDL training inside the institution, where while they were still in prison, they learned to drive semis. And so we had to bring, I think, about 14 partners or 15 partners together, including the State Department of Corrections, Bureau of Motor Vehicles, insurance company, all kinds of
trucking company, the trucking school, hospitals, and even the city, because these guys were still incarcerated. How do we get permission for them to leave the institution and to get into a semi and drive in town?
Yeah. And so as we began to do that, guys began to get jobs. So they had to be TYROs in order to get the insurance, which was super cool because of our outcomes. And then they got their CDL. They would come home on a Friday and they could start a living wage job on Monday. And so it was just super cool, because then they're a living wage with 401k, health insurance. And it's like that seamless transition back into their family, their community, and the workforce. And so we also began a welding school inside. We've done a ton forklift. We've done food trucks, where we've helped people begin and launch their food trucks, and really a TYRO entrepreneurship program.
It's been an amazing experience what God has allowed us to do, because we teach people how to dream again. But guess what? We got to be dreaming sometimes for them, right? And we're dreaming for ourselves. We're doing, what can we do next, Lord? What is possible? And so we have great relationships with the federal government. We're able to acquire funding from donors, from other corporations, from the state, and from federal government. So we're always looking churches, always looking for, because you know what the thing about it is, when people think of prison ministry and they might go into a prison, and that's great, but you got to bring change, not just with scripture, but something that's tangible. And this is where, if we're going to challenge a church, you got to be willing to get dirty. This is not clean work.
It's not easy. It's not simple. But it is the return on that investment is incredible, to watch generations transform. You know, we have so many clients, especially when we work with poverty and incarceration, that will tell us, wow, I'm the first one in over a century that's been able to get a job, been able to buy a house, buy a car, that hasn't died in a gang or in prison. And it's like, you know, you think about that, a century, and that story told over thousands of times. And it's like, you know, church, come on, you know, we've got to get better at rescuing people.
I mean, that is really amazing. If you think the first one in their family, and you said even like when you looked around that prison waiting room, they'd be having family reunions, but the family reunion was everyone on the inside. It was the grandpa and the uncle and the dad and their kid, and they're all on the inside.
Yeah. And it was heartbreaking to just think about this whole family being lost to prison. There's so much potential. There's so much capacity within the institutions. And it's just heartbreaking to think, you know, that at some point along their journey, that somebody could have disrupted that cycle of self-destruction. And, you know, we just keep praying, Lord, you know, send workers. The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. And there's huge opportunity to make such a lifelong and actually eternal difference in people's lives.
So right in people's backyard, there is a third world country right here.
Yeah.
If you're looking for a place to go do a mission, do it right in your backyard, because there's in the United States, there's prisons everywhere. There's jails everywhere. There's poverty everywhere. And I think that we lose sight of that if we're willing to want to really roll up our sleeves, put on our bootstraps, let's go to work. The family's right in your backyard. You could probably use a smile. One of the things that we practice, when we might see somebody who has a temporary tag on their vehicle, and to them, that's a brand new car. That's a brand new vehicle. We recognize that. But nobody goes out of the way to say congratulations. And so we'll, on purpose, I'll, maybe from a distance, I don't want to scare them. I'll say, hey, is that your new truck? Now, it might not be a brand new truck, but to them it is. They worked hard for it. It's got a temporary tag. And they'll say, yeah, congratulations. And to watch their response and their smile, like, wow, somebody actually validated or recognized that I worked hard for this.
All right.
Oh, that is, and that is such a wonderful little step that anyone can do. And two, as you were, really exhorting people to connect with the mission field in their own backyard, you guys have all sorts of resources on your website, right? You've got, as you said, you took things electronic. You have videos. Let's talk a little bit about what's on your website that can help be the entry ramp for our church champions to connect with you.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. We have a ton of resources. So if people are looking to make a difference, and we want to really encourage them, I mean, we have access to TYRO Youth, which really targets and works with young people ages 11 to 19. TYRO Dads, that really is designed for incarcerated or recently released dads. We've got TYRO Moms, also designed for incarcerated or recently released moms. We have TYRO Leadership, which really can be used in any setting for anybody to just help them overcome obstacles in front of them. TYRO Jet, job ethics training, that really helps change your mindset about the important value that you bring to a company and how really you're self-employed no matter where you're working.
Then we have also couple communication, where it works within a relationship. And this really helps men and women understand to understand what's being said. And this is a powerful, powerful curriculum. And then we also have core communication, that when we work with individuals and help them communicate effectively for understanding, or companies.
And to really increase their self-regulation, So we have a whole bunch of programs. We also have a High Five. We have our book, and we've got a video series, 15 for 15, that goes with High Five, 15 minutes a day for 15 days, that really helps couples connect in new and deeper ways. We have the 15 for 15 leadership, 15 minutes for 15 days. And so we've got the whole host of resources, but it just takes, we recently watched a movie that it was like, you can have whatever vehicle you want, but it's the guy in the box, the person behind it, that really makes a difference. And that is so true. It's like, we've got all these resources, but if you just look at them, or you do it just for you, and you never really take it outside of that to impact your world, I mean, it's not going to make a difference. And so we would really, constantly encourage people to change their world, their sphere of influence, the 6 feet around them that we'll never be in. God designed them for a reason, to impact their sphere of influence.
Well, I think that is just a wonderful challenge and a way to really exhort our marriage champions to partner with you, to get involved, to check out your resources, and to see how they can have an entry ramp into really making a difference in whether being a mentor couple. Like you said, there are so many ways that they can then serve that mission field that's just in our backyard. So, guys, thank you, Cathy and Ron. Thank you so much for being here with us. I really appreciate talking with you.
Yeah, it was our pleasure. Thanks for the invitation, Amy.
Thank you so much.
Oh, and marriage champions, you can always find us at samarriage.org for more information.